Hello, my resplendent art sluts. It's Allison Moon, and you are listening to Artgasm, the podcast all about the intersections of art and sexuality. On today's episode, I am talking to my very dear friend, Dixie De La Tour of Bawdy storytelling. Bawdy storytelling is I want to say it's one of a kind, but it's actually inspired a number of kind of copycats because Bawdy storytelling is an extraordinary event. It started in San Francisco, and it's all about stories about sex, gender, and kink. And it's one of my favorite events ever. I've talked about it a lot on the podcast. I've told at Bawdy Storytelling too many times to count. And I credit it with helping me find my voice around storytelling, around sexuality, around my people. It's the reason why the book Bad Dyke exists, was because it's all stories, for the most part, that I told on stage at Bawdy Storytelling. And so I think it's a really special event. And Dixie is a very special person, and I'm super excited to share her with you. We have a ton of fun on this episode. So much fun, in fact, that we talked for over 2 hours. So I had to make some executive decisions. So first off, Dixie had started our conversation as I started recording with the story of phone sex, meeting this guy on a phone sex line that led to like a 4-year courtship where they hadn't met yet, but they still talked and emailed. And then it ends up with this ecstasy-fueled fuckfest. It's a great story, but it's over 20 minutes long and it starts the episode. So I've decided to edit all of that out, and I'm going to post that to my Patreon for all of my slutty little supporters. So if you are one of those slutty little supporters, you're going to get to hear that story in its entirety on Patreon. If you want to be among those slutty little supporters, you can become a patron. So you can do that by going to patreon.com/artgasm. That's patreon.com/artgasm. And you'll get access to that story and also all of the back episodes and extra bonus episodes that I've done. I did a second parter with Brendan J. Sullivan that you heard last week. We have a second interview with him that's now up live. And so it's a lot of fun to have extra content that I like to post and then that you can, hear if you become a supporter. So in addition to cutting out that story and putting it on Patreon, I've also decided to do an Artgasm first, which is splitting this episode into 2 parts. So this first one will air like right now, like as you're listening, because you're listening to the episode. And then I'm going to release part 2 next week. So it'll be a fun bonus for everybody because this episode or this podcast usually releases every 2 weeks, but you're going to get a fun little one to help accompany you to the polls on election day. So download the podcast, put it in your ear holes, and go exercise your rights and duties as an American citizen to try and help reduce the harm that is happening to all of your brethren and sistren, and vote for democracy and vote for keeping this country alive for a little while longer. Anyway, so if you already subscribe, you'll get that episode auto-magically delivered into your feed next week. And if you don't subscribe, I don't know what to say other than go do it. Anywhere, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, all the places you can listen to the podcast. So become a subscriber. It helps me. It helps you. You don't have to think too hard. And then you just get my voice in your ear holes whenever you want. It's really exciting for everybody. So, so I love this episode because you're going to get a sense of why Dixie is a sexual folklorist. She lives and breathes story. She tells stories that elucidate stories, that help you understand stories, and then help you understand the craft of story. It's really amazing how she weaves everything together so elegantly. So you're going to get to hear true stories that she tells, and she's hilarious. And then she kind of explains why these stories are relevant or what details become important. So if you're interested in the craft of sexual storytelling, this is really a great podcast to listen to. Before we get to the interview, I'm going to just give you a couple of updates. First of all, if you are in Portland, Oregon, I'm teaching. This is not happening that very much these days, so this is a super special bonus for people who live in the Portland area. I'm teaching at the Close in Munch on Monday, November 5th. So that's just like next week. Monday, November 5th, I'm teaching BDSM 101, which is a really, really fun class to teach. I love teaching 101 stuff because I can be real basics. I am not an advanced BDSM practitioner in my own life. I really like to kind of snorkel. I'm not a scuba diver when it comes to BDSM, which is actually really great because that I feel like it allows people who are also not necessarily sure where they fit into the BDSM world, if they're really just exploring, if they're dipping their toes into the kinky waters. This is a great workshop to come to. I think it's like only an hour long tops, so I'm really going to be breezing through these topics fast, but there's a lot of audience participation. There's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, come to the Close in Munch on Monday, November 5th. To get more information, go to Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Close in Munch. That's CLOSEIN Munch, MUNCH. And it's also a great opportunity to meet other interesting people, a lot of polyamorous people, a lot of kink people, a lot of sex educators and sex professionals. It's a great way to meet sex positive community in your city. Speaking of cities, after Portland, I'm going to New York again. I'm so excited. It's been too long. So I'm going to be in New York from November 10th-ish through the 28th-ish. I am not teaching any workshops in New York, unfortunately, but I am going to be conducting interviews for future podcast episodes. So if you are an artist who thinks you'd be a good fit for Artgasm, hit me up. Or if you know of anybody in New York you'd like me to interview, hit me up. Or even if you're just a fan of somebody you think I should know and reach out to, definitely hit me up. I'm available at artgasmcast@gmail.com. Email me names, email me websites, email me people you think I should know about. And being the very filthy art slut that I am, I'm always looking to fill my eye and ear holes with new great work, particularly artists who are people of color or from otherwise underrepresented demographics. I certainly want Artgasm to represent the wide diversity of bodies, ideas, stories, experiences, and in order to be good at that, I need to have diverse voices. I am but one person with my one very specific viewpoint, and I want to include people with different viewpoints and people who do different kinds of art, especially if there's art forms that you haven't heard represented yet on the podcast. I'm continuing to make more episodes, so if you're like, I'm really into video art, or I'm really into, I have no idea, whatever, just let me know. And I would love to be able to do a good job for you. Finally, one last piece of news. If you remember episode 9, I spoke with Lev A.C. Rosen, the author of many books, including the most recent Jack of Hearts and Other Parts. Well, that book, which we talked about at length on the podcast, is now out as of today. Today is its release date. So if you have been curious about that book, get yourself over to levacrosen.com. That's Lev, L-E-V-A-C, Rosen, R-O-S-E-N.com, and find out where the book is sold, or go to your local bookseller, even better, and ask them to order it if they don't already have it on the shelves. It's always great to support your local bookstores, and it's always fun to be able to order a book and have it just delivered straight into your hands. And it certainly helps authors when books are ordered at bookstores. It sends a signal to publishers that people around the world are interested in that author's work, and that's really important. So go check out Lev's book. I'm so excited for you to read it. I'm excited to hear about it, and yeah, check it out. All right, without further ado, allow me to introduce Dixie De La Tour. I already gave you the introduction, but if you want to look up her website as we're talking, it's Bawdy Storytelling, so it's Bawdy. I say it's Bawdy like Mae West body, not like what you put clothes on, okay? So bawdystorytelling.com. She also has a podcast, so if you are curious about how these stories show up, how people perform them, check out her podcast. It's Bawdy Storytelling on all the places you expect to find stories. I don't know, I think I have like one episode up of hers, of me telling a story. I don't even remember what the story is, but you can probably find me if you search for Allison Moon Bawdy Storytelling. I also have a ton of my stories up on YouTube. Oh man, sometimes I go back and I'm like, fashion choices. What were those even? But it's still fun to go back and look at my old stories and to remember those naive and blue-haired times. Okay, without further ado, please enjoy part 1 of my interview with Dixie De La Tour. Get that cough drop. Yeah. Oh, I should probably take mine out too. Sexy.
Oh, that is classy.
Yeah,
right
so
there.
you now can just look at my half-eaten cough drop for the rest of the conversation.
Can you put a little extra spit?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's on my laptop. I don't want to do that.
So it's funny because one of the things that I got critiqued on with Bad Dyke, the book that I published because of Bawdy storytelling.
I hope there is an affiliate link in this blog post about this podcast episode to buy Bad Dyke.
There will always be a link to buy my books. Are you crazy? How do you think I make money? But yeah, so I was on a radio show, and it was a college radio show, and it was like a lot of great conversations about this stuff. And then somebody asked, like, well, how do you respond to the fact that like drinking and drugs are in almost every story? And as a sex educator, don't you think that's irresponsible? Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, good question, you know? Mm-hmm. And ultimately I just had to say, like, well, yeah, a lot of this, I mean, I tell the true stories, and a lot of times I've used drugs and alcohol and sex at the same time. And I stand by those experiences, and I'm very lucky that I have had generally only positive experiences while doing substances. But at the same time, I realized that that can be considered, you know, a problem for readers to think that, you know, I'm always altered. Mm-hmm. But then I was able to parlay it into like, well, so here's the thing about how you can use alcohol and sex and all this stuff at the same time. But like checking out versus checking in and stuff. I mean, I basically turned it into a teaching moment. But it was kind of interesting because that was the first time anybody had mentioned that to me even. And I didn't really notice because a lot of the stories are sober too. And the first couple stories in the book, like I hadn't even been drinking at that point in my life while I was having all those experiences. But it was still an interesting moment of like, wow, like as soon as you talk about illicit substances or altering substances and sexuality, a lot of people immediately, like they can be on board, but then you lose them.
Yeah.
So the ecstasy part, and so you say you don't usually tell stories about drugs.
Yeah, every once in a while I'll go, okay, y'all, this is the real story. And they'll go, well, you said it was a real story. You said it was a true story. I'm like, it is a true story, but you lose people in the various parts of your lives, you know? Ultimately, a story should be relatable and a peek at someone's life. Mm-hmm. My life is going to involve drinking. I don't do ecstasy anymore. Unfortunately, it was awesome. But
Molly's better.
Yeah, well, I haven't done any of those in years, but, you know, there are people who are going to be totally on board with all the crazy adventure in the story. And, oh, my God, this is a great trip down memory lane. I remember phone sex lines. They're totally on board. And then all of a sudden, ecstasy comes up and it's like, screech.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's because of people's own ideas about what is dangerous? Or do you think it's because a lot of people have bad experiences when on drugs, and so therefore they just kind of collapse those as being never okay?
Well, it's kind of like the same thing where, you know, all of us have been raised many of us with religious upbringings. Mm-hmm. So they can be totally on board with the story until, for example, Jeffrey Allen Hayes' story about how he lost his virginity on the altar in a church. Mm-hmm. There are people who are like, this is a great story. Oh my God. And he showed up and he's good looking and then we fucked on the altar of a church. Mm-hmm. You lost me, you know?
Sure.
And, you know, I don't want to dumb it down. Right. I don't want it to be, okay, here, but if I'm coaching a story or if I know what's going to fly on stage, you always got to read your audience.
Right.
And if your audience if you're doing sex and storytelling in the basement of a church, maybe leave the part about fucking on the altar out.
Oh my God, but that's the part where we make so many other people really excited.
Mm-hmm. So you record it, and the people who aren't in a church get to listen to the story.
Interesting.
But you're always going to lose somebody on. I do with the theme sex and drugs and rock and roll. Mm-hmm. You want to have a story about drugs? Let's put it in that show, you know? But there are just too many people. I mean, typically at Bawdy, the audience is 80 to 90% people who don't go to sex-positive events. They've never been to the show. They just have heard the stories are amazing. Right. So if that's all you know, we're going to talk frankly about sex, and the stories are amazing and you won't hear them anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm going to show up. I'm going to sit in the audience. Oh, they badmouth Jesus. You lost me.
Yeah.
You know? You got to take care of your audience. I really feel very strongly about the fact that your audience deserves to... I don't give trigger warnings. I don't believe in trigger warnings. But I am the one who is filtering for the trigger warning. I'm I'm not going to give away this story.
Right.
But... let's make sure the audience is not going to end up crying in the women's room.
Right.
Because that's happened before.
Yeah,
when people pulled surprises on me.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
You were in that show.
I was in that show. I was the closer in that show.
Oh, man.
You hung me out to dry, Dixie.
So do you know why you ended up in that show?
Why?
Because I curated that lineup so carefully because there was a rock star in that lineup. We're sorry we're not telling you everything, but maybe we shouldn't tell you everything. You were the closer because you're a great storyteller. So I'm like, I'm only putting the best in this show. How did I know somebody was going to go way off in the weeds?
Yeah.
Have me getting yelled at the break.
Yeah.
Because they did something that we had not discussed and they thought would be a good idea, which ended up freaking a bunch of people out at the show.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I don't have that kind of trauma background, but I was freaking out because it was just like you're in a space with 300 other people having an experience of intense discomfort.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about Nanette last night.
Yeah.
We're just like, how many of these people signed up for this? How many people knew that this was what they were going to see?
Yeah.
And when you're in a theater with thousands of other people, like you can't help but feel the energy of the room. I mean, that's what theater is so good at, is you're riding the wave of not only what the performers are doing, but what the audience is feeling too. And when you're in the audience and you're trapped, it feels like in an audience, listening to something that feels like it's kind of gone off the rails, you know?
I sit on stage for the whole show. Here's where it helps to have a dysfunctional childhood. I'm always sitting there hyper conscious through the entire story going, do it the way we talked about, do it the way we talked about, because I can feel the energy of the room.
Right.
I can feel them starting to go, I'm getting really uncomfortable with this story. That's part of the coaching. Let's not make people feel bad.
Right.
Everybody I know has been tagging the shit out of me on Facebook going, oh my God, Nanette, totally right up your alley. This is so what you do for a living. Isn't it amazing? And it's powerful. And I watched it and just sat there and went, who the fuck took care of these 5,000 people in the audience?
Right.
They thought they were going to a comedy show.
Right.
And all of a sudden, there's all these things that are going to trigger any assault victim.
Right.
You know? And I'm really glad it's out there. And I loved watching it. But if somebody had told me, apparently I needed a trigger warning as much as I dislike them, had said, don't worry, everybody get a heads up. There's going to be a big transformative moment in this. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we all know it's coming.
Right.
I would have enjoyed it in a completely different way.
Yeah, because you would have been watching the craftsmanship of it too. Yeah, that's a really good point. Because like I think that trigger warning. I mean, I'm of two minds with trigger warnings. Because I think that like if you can safe port people, like it's like you have to walk that line between spoilers and letting people know exactly what to expect. For instance, I was just watching this movie called The Florida Project. Have you seen this? It's great. I loved it. But the problem is, you know, it's basically it's from the point of view of a little girl who's kind of neglected, and lives in this motel. And so she gets into these crazy adventures. She's a little nymph, right? She's just running around, just getting into trouble, just fucking with people. And it's really beautiful. It's very, very, very realistic, very POV. But there are little moments of like danger. And you're like, well, this is a movie about a little girl who's neglected, so obviously something horrible is going to happen to her. And so I kind of kept on waiting for something horrible to happen to her because I was just like, well, this is what movies do to little girls, really. And I was like, oh, this is what dramas do. And ultimately, nothing terrible happens to her. She's just...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but I think that's exactly... Like, I actually had to pause the movie because my partner we've watched some movies where he's gotten really triggered by stuff. So we had to pause the movie, and I actually had to Google it to see, like, okay, like, does this stay the same tone? Because I really want it to stay the same tone because it's really brilliant as it is. And I Googled it and I saw it, like I read the review in the Times or something. And then it was like, oh, it's like this kind of like exploratory blah, blah, blah. And like the only menace is this one scene. And I'm like, oh, good. Okay. We can keep watching. And just because like it was just basically making sure that I wasn't constantly on edge, waiting for this movie to destroy me, you know? And so I think that a trigger warning can be useful in those spaces where it's just like, yeah, like we were saying, like, just be aware that this is going to subvert the comedy trope. This is going to shift. There's going to be a strong dramatic moment, just so that you know you can steel yourself for that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that people are going to, you know, run out screaming. It doesn't mean that people are going to protest. It just means that people have a little bit more heads up.
Well, I just kept thinking these people were told they're coming to a comedy show.
Yeah.
And this is a comedian.
Right.
And it's comedy. So you're going to sit there completely open. You're going to sit there and go, oh, that's so true. What an amusing anecdote. Ha! She's funny. bad shit. Just like the show you were in.
Yeah.
After that moment, the rest of us were just like, the energy had been sucked out of the room. Mm-hmm. Everybody was uncomfortable.
You were just watching somebody just work out their own therapy stuff on stage. You felt used. That's totally. What the problem with as an audience member, where you're like, this isn't about me. This isn't about giving an experience to us. This is about you just processing on stage.
Yeah, not cool.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I was like, afterwards, you were super activated. Everybody was super activated, but I was like, how did you let this story through? Yeah. And you're like, she pitched me a different story.
Well, yes, and that's an interesting thing. But here's the thing. She'd been working on it as a solo show for 4 years.
Wow.
There is no way you cannot have had transformation in 4 years of working on a story. You're not processing it on stage. Nothing is going to indicate you're going to process it on stage.
Right.
I went to see the solo show.
Oh, wow.
The week before, so I would know what was going to happen. She came to, we're sorry we're alluding to things and not giving you any details, but it's safer for me this way.
Yeah. I think the takeaway is,
this is a safe space.
Yeah.
But she came to rehearsal a couple days before the show. Mm-hmm. I gave her feedback on the things that she had to change in the story so that the audience could fully understand the story. And what we're doing right now is not a good example of this, but like the audience needs to understand this. They need to understand this. The other people in the show at rehearsal gave her feedback. She took copious notes. Wow. She said, "This is excellent feedback. These are going to be so helpful on stage," and then got on stage, did exactly what the fuck she wanted to, which was not anything we had talked about at all. Dropped my mic. Don't drop my fucking mic. It's expensive. That's not cool. Don't ever drop the mic.
Mic drops are a metaphor.
Yes.
Or for people who can buy more mics.
Don't be cliche. And then we were just left to bat cleanup.
Yeah.
And batting cleanup is a lot harder when the story was about rape.
Yeah.
So, I would never put a story that somebody was processing about something that triggering and that powerful on stage without making sure they were ready to tell that story.
And that's because you've had a lot of stories on Bawdy storytelling stage about sexual assault, about trauma, about rape. And they've been very powerful. Sometimes they've been very funny. Sometimes they've been very heartfelt. But ultimately, if it's well done, it's about transformation. That's what story is about.
Yeah.
And so when you're just stuck in the first act, or when you're stuck at the climax and there's no denouement, like when it's all just, the story is just still this one shivering moment, and there's nothing to feel like there's to invite people into the space, it seems like that's when things go really sideways.
Yeah. One of the things I really savor before a show, and I do it right before a show, is I've done X numbers of hours of coaching. I've heard all the stories. I have coached all the stories. Sometimes for a 10-minute story, they've been coached 12, 15 hours.
Wow.
So that they can get to a place like, so what's this story about for you? Well, I don't know. It's about, no, let's make it relatable for the audience. Let's include them in the story. Let's give them all the details. So there's a lot of, it starts here and it ends up here. Mm-hmm. Right before the show, I look at where it's ended up and I'm like, okay, how do I curate this show to make a story out of this show? To take these 4 or 5 stories and fit them together in a way that starts feeling like this and ends feeling like this.
Nice.
Before the break, what's our goal? For people to talk to each other. So that's the power spot. That's the story that makes people turn to their neighbor and go, holy shit, that happened to me one time, or what an amazing story. Now you're engaging with people, not just sitting and passively listening.
Right.
This is one of my favorite things to do. Mm-hmm. It's hardest when there's a story about sexual assault in the lineup, because I'm like, okay, well, that's definitely not the end of the show.
Right.
Sometimes it's the power spot.
Right.
It's definitely not a show opener. So I've got to figure out how to fit it in and how to bring people back.
Right.
Because the goal of the show is just like, okay, let's pretend life is hard and our president is a dickhead.
Let's pretend. Yeah.
Let's pretend. Why are you going to spend money to go out and leave your house? You're going to leave your house so that you can have a great experience and maybe connect with other people face to face and learn a bunch of stuff and hear some amazing stories and end on a note, which is why you're the closer, Allison. End on a note that makes you feel affirmed, that makes you feel I am not alone. There are other people like me. It's a celebration.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a thing for me where I'm just like, how do I want to open this? Yeah. I like a powerful opener. How do I want to end this? I want to end on a celebration. You know? When you have a story about sexual assault, you have to curate pretty carefully and you have to know exactly what they're going to say.
Well, that's what I really like about the body storytelling in general is that it's for you, it's so community based. And again, like in this day and age where live performance, where getting out of the house is harder and harder, where it seems like collecting an audience is harder and harder.
It is.
I really value that this event is about the audience. It's about community. You talk about when you introduce the show, you talk about like turn to your neighbors, like these are the people who you're going to be flirting with later, like all this kind of stuff to get people to look at each other. It's not just look at the shiny things on stage. Yeah. It's like look at each other, talk to each other, meet people. You have bango during the intermission, which is like an opportunity for people to meet one another and talk about things and start thinking about their own stories. I love that because it's not this elitist thing of like the storytellers are these professional performers and then all the plebes are paying money to watch. It's like actually everybody's got a story, at least one. Everybody has the potential to get on stage and tell their own story. And if you can't, you can still tell the story to the people around you in the audience. It does a beautiful thing to kind of keep sex positive culture alive in San Francisco. But it also seems like it keeps people aware that like it's not about us versus them. It's not about the sex positive superheroes and all of the others. It's like we all have sex lives for the most part, and we have stories to tell one another.
Yeah, and you also try and get people out of that judgmental place where they're like, I don't know. I would not do the things that they did in that story, so I really didn't like that story. Well, let's try and, as we're working on coaching that story, I've always got those little voices in my head that want to come up and complain to me and go, I didn't like that story. Well, one, don't do it then, you know. But every story is kind of crafted to the person you're telling the story to. When you're telling this story to hundreds of people, you can't craft it to that. So the craft is in, what's the note we're going to end on that is the relatable kernel of a story that we can all take away and feel good about. We're back at why you leave the drugs out of the story sometimes. Right. Unless they kind of have a heads up for a show called Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. Right. There's going to be a little drug talk. Might not be the show for you. Come next month. Yeah. We won't talk about drugs next month. You know?
My favorite was the theme, trigger warning. Or was it the trigger warning?
Yeah, there was a trigger warning.
And that was like, because you wanted me to be in the show too. And I'm like, I don't do really dramatic stuff. Like, I'm a pretty vanilla girl. And you're like, it's fine. Like, just whatever. And I'm like, oh, God. And like, I knew it was a collaboration with Risk, right? Yeah. And I know Kevin Allison, bless his filthy heart. So it's just like, I can't compete with this stuff. But it was really fun to have a show where you could just be scary, gross, intense.
You know where the idea for that show came up? Because I was telling the concept to Kevin when we were hanging out in San Francisco when he was visiting. And he's like, I want to do trigger warning. And I was like, let's do it together. And that was our first collaboration.
Oh, nice.
But that came from me bitching to a friend, Miss Maggie Mayhem. And me going, oh my God, people want trigger warnings. They want to know that they, like, okay, I just want to tell you, there's going to be some sex in this story. You know, like you walked in. And she's like, Dix, have you ever thought about doing the theme trigger warning? And I'm like, I don't believe in trigger warnings. And she goes, so here's the great thing. When they come up to you and go, did you see the sign on the fucking door? Did you see the name of the show?
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to do that part. You're just going to have to go, if you're in here, you better be down.
Right.
You know? And it might not be the show for you.
Right.
It didn't end up as planned. They never end up as you plan. You know? Rachel Lark wrote for the guys for that show.
I love that song.
I love that song. And
Rachel Lark was a guest on our very first episode of Artgasm.
First episode.
She was the inaugural guest, yeah. Yeah.
God, I love that woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wrote that song. This is a horrible story. I shouldn't tell this story. She got so mad at me because we didn't put it in that show.
Oh.
And there was a reason. There were multiple forces at work. And she was so angry at me. We're backstage and she's glaring at me. Just like, and I'm like, I'm with you. We're going to save it. We're going to make it special. And like the bitch I am, when she got a standing ovation with hundreds of people with tears running down their face when she debuted it, I'm like, this was the right place for it.
Yeah.
We saved it so that people could enjoy it and savor it and there were no distractions.
Well, yeah, because I feel like the trigger warning audience were coming to be just titillated on a deeper level, on a more extreme level.
It was Folsom Street Fair weekend.
Right. But For the Guys is a song that's about sexual assault, and having it debut, I think I was there that night at like a more standard theme. It meant that people were they were listening a little bit more carefully. They weren't looking for frivolity in darkness. They were actually just listening with a little bit more softness, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah,
I wasn't in the audience. I don't know what the experience is from the audience. I'm trying really hard to pick up on all the clues, but I love it when people come up to me after a show and say, so here's something you should know. The woman sitting next to me had this reaction, and I'm like, oh, good. This helps me do my job better.
Yeah.
I wasn't out there. I was listening to hundreds of people at the same time, but you had an experience of someone reacting to a story.
Yeah.
We don't want to take our stories and, dilute them so that they're palatable for everybody in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're going to leave your house and you're going to pay money and you're going to deal with your social anxiety and you're going to put your phone away and you're going to pay attention for 2+ hours, then I'm going to do the best job I can to make sure you have a good experience. Maybe, is that a sellout? Is that a sellout by not going, okay, yeah, just blow them away. Just go ahead and fry the edges. Everybody in the room is going to walk out feeling like something horrible, like it's not about impact for me. It's about making sure the audience has a great experience.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into this line of work in the first place.
Into this line of work.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you got into this line of work.
Come on. I've known you for 10
At least 10 years, yeah.
And I've been telling for you for a number of those. Well, I guess it's been a little bit shorter than that. It's when we moved to the Bay Area, so like 6 or 7 years. But the point is, I've known you from Bawdy storytelling almost exclusively, and then we became friends through Bawdy storytelling. But I don't know a whole lot about why. I hear you talk about how much you love story, but I don't really know how you found this work, and I actually kind of find it interesting. And now it's an opportunity for me to ask you. So
I like the way you're like, I kind of find it interesting. Kind of. Make it good. Woman. Make it good. It might be interesting, might not. That was Allison Moon's laugh. Isn't it awesome?
God.
Best laugh
this
ever.
This is actually why you invite me to the show, is just so I laugh loud. And
Allison has moved out of San Francisco, and now I just God, when I listen to the audience, there's no trademark Allison Moon laugh in the audience, and it makes me so sad because it always made me feel like I was doing a good job when Allison would laugh. I'm like, oh my God, because it's so real and natural. Some people are like, and you're just like, oh, you're just, that felt fake.
I am a very good audience plant. If anybody needs laughter in their show, I take PayPal.
And you lived in LA? I can't believe they didn't pay you to sit in the audience and laugh professionally. If anybody can make a living off it, you and me could do it. Because our laughs start other people's laughs.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes I will laugh before I intended to, just to get the audience going. I'm a laughter fluffer. Yeah, it's true.
I'm excruciatingly high when I laugh in reaction to your laugh. Where to start? Okay. So I was a sex party producer in San Francisco. Southern girl who moved from Atlanta to San Francisco.
So that I feel like is relevant.
Okay, back me up. Coach, put me in coach.
Okay.
Where should I start?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we have to talk about how
Story
you craft
coaching.
So I feel like this being from the South is relevant only because the culture. I'm a Yankee, so I don't know. But like my stereotype of the South is that Southerners care a lot about story. There is a certain yarn tradition in the South that doesn't exist elsewhere in the country.
So, where'd you grow up?
Ohio.
Okay. Did y'all have television?
Yeah, we had TV.
We got cable in I don't know, 1994. I don't know. But we didn't, there was nothing. There was nothing to do. So Southerners one of my favorite things to do, I lived in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. My Aunt Dot lived in West Virginia on top of a mountain. During summers, we would always go out to Aunt Dot's house. They'd dig a hole. They'd kill a pig. They'd put a pig in. They'd say, it's going to take 3 days for the pig to cook. What are we going to do? And then they'd start drinking. And they'd, pass around a dobro and a banjo and a guitar and things like that.
Wait, what's a dobro?
It's a musical instrument.
A dobro. I've never heard of it before.
Often used in country music.
Okay.
Yeah. But somehow everybody could play all the different instruments. I'm tired of banjo. Hand me the guitar.
Nice.
So they'd sit there, they'd drink, they'd tell stories, and all the other kids would be out doing stuff, and I would be sitting there listening to the stories, which were, not that interesting. But they were like, oh, remember that time Alma Fitzgerald? She showed up drunk at that party with her dress up over her head. Like, wasn't great stories, but it was sweet memories for them. So you get to know people in different contexts, like Aunt Alma? God damn, And then at the end of it, we'd all go out. They'd be drunk. We'd eat pig, But it was one of my favorite things to do, because people shut themselves down. You get a few drinks in you. You go, well, we got to kill some time. Obviously, you're not in any hurry. I can relax into a story. I don't have to feel like you got 2 minutes. I better capture your attention, get to the punchline, wrap it up nicely. It was just kind of like this meandering kind of thing.
Yeah, as opposed to like the quippiness of other kinds of storytelling culture, like New York and all. That's where it's about rapid fire.
Mountain men in West Virginia do not quit.
Oh man, that's the tagline for this episode.
And so I just always really liked stories, and I always liked creating stories. I always liked going out, okay, what's my goal for tonight? I've always figured, there is this, I kind of feel like there's a picture frame on an event. It's like, doesn't have any glass on it. Here's the frame. Where are we going to lay it down? That's beginning, middle, ending of a story. Nice. I would approach life that way. I'm going on a date. Beginning, middle, ending. What's going to happen? Oh, wait, he invited me back to his house. He might be a serial killer. I should keep going. I have to know how it ends.
Right.
When I moved to San Francisco from Atlanta, I pretty soon got invited to sex parties and went, I never knew. And, I was the dirty girl who would sneak into the quarter loops and watch gay men suck dick. And when the cheerleaders would go, how do you give a blowjob? I'd never given a blowjob. I go, it's surprising. You suck. You don't blow.
It's true.
How do you know that? I go watch porn. I started sneaking in when I was 15. I started sneaking into gay bars when I was 15.
Wow.
I had one of my best friends had come out as gay. I somehow got invited into gay male culture. And then they're just like, we're going to go down to the park in Roanoke. And they'd have a juice bar. And then they'd have, beer and wine. Don't drink beer and wine. So, the person at the door would go, who's she? And they go, oh, that's my friend Dixie. And they go, she's fine. Then go in. I'm sorry, the park. Still around. And, it's like a famous gay bar in Roanoke because...
Nice. There you go.
It's a gay bar in Roanoke. You should be famous for that. There weren't a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
And so I'd, hang out at these bars. I'd go to drag shows, really early, starting to learn about that culture. And where was I going with this?
You were just talking about your history and finding yourself storytelling, but then you went to San Francisco and started going to sex parties.
Yeah. So when I first got invited to a sex party, I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who invited you?
That's a very good question. I don't remember the first one. Which you're supposed to remember your first.
You always remember your first.
You always remember your first one. I can't really remember. I do remember, I think one of the first sex parties I ever threw was I was hanging out with a bunch of pretty young burner people who were younger than me who were just like, let's throw a sex party. And I was like, okay. I've been to a few of them, and they're like, what are we going to call it? And they decided to call it like San Fran Sensual. I hate the word sensual. And I was like, okay, if that makes you feel good.
What about San Fran Sexual? It's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, totally. But sensual is less scary.
It's true. It just invokes feathers and...
Yeah, thank God I have something to do with my peacock feather. I bring it to parties.
Sitting in the corner collecting dust most of the year.
Yeah.
Finally, it gets that one chance
I bought
to
it
shine.
and it's pretty, and now I can take it out and wear shiny clothing and stuff like that. So we put together a party in a warehouse. I believe it's on Clara Street in San Francisco, which is all high-rise condos now, I think.
Wow.
And
Not back then. Jesus Christ.
yeah, it was just cavernous warehouses where you're like, I have a space. Let's do a sex party in it. It's freezing in here. Let's get warm then.
Yeah, exactly. It's always good to have the sex party be a little bit too cold.
Well, you got to warm the room up enough for them to take their clothes off.
Also true.
Then make
Then you turn on the AC. It's so fucked up.
It may look organic, but there's a plan.
There's just somebody hanging out by the thermostat.
Yeah, so I started going to sex parties and like I'm not OCD, but when it comes to sex parties, I'm OCD. Like if you invited me to a sex party, I went to everything I was invited to. I'm like, I'm gonna make sure I'm getting invited back. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna throw a sex party. Here's the concept. That's a terrible idea. I'm definitely going to be at that one because you're never going to do that again.
What's the worst sex party idea that you've ever been a part of?
Well, for example, there was a polyamorous / swinger party that was, couples only, gender balance, all this kind of stuff. You can make money off of those people.
Yep.
But how many single men want to show up at that party? They will pay 5 times what the other people will pay to get into that party. It's a dream come true.
Right.
What does everybody do? Lock out those guys.
Yep.
So this party was a swinger / poly party where we are going to invite in 15 hand-picked with air quotes men that can have access to this party. We're going to charge them a lot of money, And then they realized that this might not be the best idea because the couples were all like, really? There's going to be a bunch of extra dudes?
Right.
So they're
the
like,
whole point of swingers is that the guys feel like they have the pick of the litter, so to speak.
yeah. I'm not sure how this feels. This feels like a bad idea. Call your unicorn friends.
Right.
To try and make it feel a little bit more attractive for the couples.
Now you're gender balancing the gender balance.
Yeah, you're gender balancing the thing that was not gender balanced.
Stocking the pond with the things that eat the other things so that the other thing, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so...
I can already see this math is not working.
Yeah, when I was invited to that party, a few days before the party, it was like, hey, we're just thinking it would be good to have a couple of single women who are comfortable in this environment. Can you come? You can talk to anybody. And I'm just like, oh, this is a horrible idea. Yeah, I'll be there. I want to see that.
I'm just gonna, can I bring my own popcorn?
And I walk in, and it's like, there's the couples who are milling around, and the women are wearing their little lingerie and stockings and stuff like that. Everybody's super sexy. Hello, I'm a fat girl, And then there's these 12 or 15 guys who are wandering around with chest hair sticking out of their polyester shirts. And they're, like, hello, I'm a jeweler. Can you tell from the chain around my neck? Like lots of like, ugh, and they're not interested in me and I'm not interested in them, but I wanted to be there because I wanted to see what it was like. Guess what, Allison? You got me telling stories, so I have to tell the rest of the story.
Please.
Your episode is going to be 18 hours long.
I can already tell we're going to break this into 2 episodes.
You can? Okay.
Yeah, this is great. So, yeah. Stay tuned for part 2.
I'm thinking in terms of like, if this is 1 hour, we have not even gotten anywhere. It's just me rambling.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into the craft of storytelling.
Well, sometimes people love stories. You love stories.
I love stories.
So I'm just like, okay.
That's what I mean. That's like the number one thing they always tell you in podcasting and elsewhere. That was just like, to get anybody to pay attention, you have to tell it in a story. I mean, they talk to entrepreneurs about this.
Yeah.
Don't just talk about what you do and how you can help people. You have to talk about, like, when I was 16, I had the experience with blah, blah, blah. I almost died. And then I realized a couple things.
The struggle story.
People want to hear the struggle.
Tell me your struggle story.
Yeah.
And now my company makes $4 million a year selling organic fruit.
And then everybody's like, you deserve it. You deserve it.
You totally had me when things were hard. I'm going to buy your fruit.
It's totally true. That shit works.
It does. It totally works. Yeah. Okay. So I go to this sex party where they've got all these dudes who are wandering around. I walk in, check out the dudes, check out the couples. It's a little awkward, but I just wanted to have the experience of showing up, see what it's like. I'm wandering around. I go out on the smoker's porch, the outdoor area, and there's this guy who's smoking a cigar, and he is regaling this couple who are clearly at their first sex party, and they're just like looking at him like, oh, I'm afraid of him, you know. He's just rambling. He turns around and, hey, what's your name? And I'm like, I'm Dixie De La Tour. He goes, hey, we're on the same email list. You go to sex parties. I go to sex parties. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, my name is John. And I'm like, oh, I totally have seen your name. I've never met you. And he's kind of like starts telling me a story. They always do this. You like stories. And I settle in, you know. And he tells me the story of, he says, so I'm really rich. Always a good start. I have so much money. And you know, I have curated this amazing life. I throw parties all the time. I go to fancy mansion, penthouse sex parties. I like to put ads up on Craigslist. And I like to say, give me your email. I will text you to say when there's going to be an orgy. I will text everybody. And the text will say, room 412, Argent Hotel, 7 p.m. on Friday, you know? And people will show up. I don't know who they are. I just have their fucking number to text them. Right. And this huge orgy will happen. And, you know, I do those a lot because it's a great way to meet people and get laid. And so, you know, there's this woman who's been coming to these parties for a while. I don't know who's who. And, you know, I'm kind of a big deal. I was top 5 bachelors in the Nob Hill Gazette.
Ew. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to squick someone's squee. I'm sure that's very attractive.
Somebody is rubbing their hands together in glee. It's like, oh, he sounds dreamy.
Well, then, if the Nob Hill Gazette said so, I mean, who am I to judge?
He was dreamy and rich. You know, so I've just got this amazing life. I'm throwing these orgies off Craigslist, and at the end, I'm kind of putting the room back together. Over the course of, you know, 3 or 4, I've seen this woman across the room getting banged by somebody, you know. I've probably had sex with her a few times, who knows. And one time I'm sitting there and you know, she's putting her garters and stockings back on. She's going to head back out into the world. Everybody's kind of left. And I know I'm a big deal. I know I can choose what I want in life. And I just really don't think anybody's ever going to be worthy of this. So I'm just like, hey, how are you? And she tells me her name, and I kind of go, oh, yeah, I think I've seen that name somehow on the, you know. And we start talking. And she speaks 5 languages. She is an actual rocket scientist. And I'm like, wow. So the next orgy, I'm kind of keeping an eye out for her. She feels a little special. And eventually, you know, I ask her on a date. And we go out on a date, which after 12 or 15 orgies is a little awkward. I've done that before. It does feel awkward. It's a gear shift.
It was at first you're like, I don't know what you look like with clothes on.
Yeah.
I've definitely had the problem of recognizing people when they're wearing clothes and in a non-sexual space. I'm like, what? How do we know? Oh, right.
Oh, the birthmark.
Exactly. That scar, the appendectomy scar. Yeah.
How have you been? I haven't seen you since I fisted you at that party. So, you know, we go out on a date. It's going really well. And I really like this woman. I think her name was Tanya. I really like Tanya. So I decide I am going to... Holy shit, I just realized I broke the rule again. Okay, here it comes. It's coming. Get ready. Trigger warning. Here it comes. So I decided at one point, I have not had enough coffee to cohesively put a story together because I'm surprising myself my own stories. Oh my God, that totally happened. And he's just telling me at a certain point, I just realized I really love this woman and I want to give her something that I've never given anybody before, something I've never done before. So I give her the gift of monogamy. We're at a swinger party. I'm curious as to how that works.
Is Tanya there with him?
He said, would you like to meet her? And I say, yeah, I'd like to meet her. So we go inside the party. The music is loud. There's a little alcove. It's got a little leather chaise lounge. And she is laying there with this beautiful reddish blonde hair that goes down to her ass. And she's wearing a leopard dress and gold stiletto heels that perfectly match the chaise lounge.
Wow.
Like leather, like leopard mini dress, gold stiletto heels, gold, you know. And she's just lounging there with her hair flipped back over the chaise. She's like just a picture. And he goes, darling, beloved, this is Dixie De La Tour. And she goes, oh, I've heard her name. And I'm like, yeah. And, you know, sometimes when you're meeting somebody, you're just like, how's this going? And instantly he starts going, and then, oh my God, and you were there? Oh, that was amazing. Conversation is like really clicking. The three of us are talking over each other. We're just like, it makes you feel good when that happens. You're like, oh, they find me interesting.
Sure.
Yeah. And at a certain point, we're fighting for the airtime. Oh, yeah, I was at that party. That was a crazy party. Let me tell you a story about that party. At a certain point, he turns to her and looks at her and he goes, are you coming on right now? And I realize they're on drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm not interesting. They're on ecstasy.
Yeah. Drugs are interesting.
I surprised myself with my own drug reference in a story. Did you actually think that was the end of the story?
I mean, maybe.
We were on drugs. The end.
Okay, well, how did it actually end?
Okay, so, well, I'm in now. You know, there's guys walking around with chest hair and necklaces and couples, and there's fucking, and this is not the party for me. There's nothing drawing my attention away. So I'm just like, yes, they are on ecstasy, and I'm not, but what the hell? I'm just going to keep talking to them because it's a fun conversation. And at a certain point, things are starting to get quieter behind us, and he goes, you know what? Party's starting to wrap down. We live like 3 blocks away. And, you know, why don't we just take the party back to there? And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm wide awake and, you know, just really like talking to people apparently. So let's go. We get in a cab. And he's just like, okay, so we live in this loft. Like there's a lot of art. I work with art. It's an enormous loft. You're going to have to climb up this flight of steps. Place is huge and it costs a fortune to heat. So we really just like keep the bedroom warm. That's smart. That makes sense to me.
Swinger smart.
Swinger smart.
We'll call swinger smart.
This episode will be called Trigger Warnings, Story Coaching, and Swinger Smarts. And so, you know, we go up the steps. We're going through. There's all this art I recognize everywhere. We go through. There are meat flaps. Like in a freezer.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, not that kind of meat flaps.
There are those two, I'm sure. But yeah.
What? We go through the flaps. The bedroom is indeed warm. The rest of the house was cold.
All right.
I'm like, oh, this is very smart. I wouldn't be able to afford to heat this place.
Sure.
So there's this big 4-poster bed. And it's, you know, huge. And you've got this little set of steps going up to it, kind of like a little dog would get up onto a tall bed kind of thing. And Tanya, in her beautiful gold heels, goes up the little steps to climb in the middle of the bed. And
with the heels on.
With the heels on. Yeah. And I'm an empathetic person. I think, if I were on ecstasy right now, what would I want? Those shoes look uncomfortable. So I climb up the little steps behind her and I get in the middle of the bed and I peel off her gold shoes and I start rubbing her feet. And you know what it's like when somebody is on ecstasy, they're like, oh.
When I'm not on ecstasy, a foot rub feels like that.
I love foot rubs, yeah. And so she's just like, that's amazing. And we're just continuing to talk. And I'm not really paying attention, but in the background, there's like things in the room that are starting to change. The lights are very dim. I see that, mood music comes on, very down tempo, very low in the background, kind of sexy. I notice a couple of candles are being lit around the edge of the bed. And then out of the darkness comes John, wearing a traditional red velvet smoking jacket. He's taken his clothes off. And he climbs into the bed. And Tanya's kind of leaning against the headboard as I'm rubbing her feet down closer toward the end of the bed. And he sits next to his bride. He likes to refer to her as my bride repeatedly. And he puts his arm around her and she cuddles into him while I continue rubbing her feet. And she and I are just really having a good conversation. And at a certain point, he waits for a pause in the conversation and he goes, "We can't believe we got you here." Uh-oh. And he looks at her and he looks at me. And he says, "She and I never agree on the same woman." And when you walked in tonight, we both went, typically it's, I don't know, she's too, we took one look at you and went, her, at the same time.
That's so sweet.
And he's like, "So, I just want to tell you, this is going to be an amazing night." And so there are a lot of things that I've always wanted but never had. So I'm thinking, so I'd like you to, I want to watch you 269 for starters. And then eventually your hand seems smaller than mine. I'd like to watch you fister. And then, then maybe like some anal. There's a strap on. Probably be good for you. Yeah, like he's giving me this litany of everything that's going to happen. And I'm sitting there going, how the fuck did I get picked up by swingers at a sex party and not know it was happening?
You think the first candle that was being lit in the room would have been yours?
I was talking. I didn't even notice. It kind of came together when he started going, "So here's how it's going to go." I'm like, uh-oh. I'm an idiot. And so he's giving me this litany, and I'm just like, okay, here's a huge problem. The beginning of the conversation with this person was, we were on the same sex party list. We kind of already know each other.
Right.
He's not an anonymous stranger. We're in the same community. And I know for a fact that when you meet somebody face to face, when you've been running around online with them, when you see them face to face, you're going to run into them at the grocery store 3 times that week. It always happens.
Sure.
It is going to be awkward because I did not have any plans to have sex with these people. I just they went parties wrapping up. We live nearby. I'm like, keep going.
Sure.
Party,
Sure.
So he's just giving me the litany. He's thought out the logistics. He's going to be pulling out the sex toys soon. I have a strap on. It says she really likes this one. You might like this one. He's just going off and I'm like, how do I get out of here without it not being awkward for the rest of time? Every time I go to a party or the grocery store, I'm going to run into them.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear that record screech.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
How do I not make them feel bad?
Yeah.
Because rejection, once you've already got somebody in your bed, all signs point to yes, and you're just like, oh.
And they assumed, and you assume, yeah. Sure.
So I'm thinking frantically the whole time he's giving me the litany. And then at some point, he's like, yeah, so what do you think? And I'm like, that all sounds great. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. Except for one thing. He's like, what? I'm like, I'm into feet. He's like, what? And I gestured to his wife's feet in my hands. I was so smart.
That's pretty smart.
I was like, into feet. I like feet. So all the things you said, so good. Except, while you fuck your wife, I'm going to rub her feet. And while your wife's sitting on while she's sitting on your face, I'm going to be rubbing your feet. While you're fucking her doggy style, yeah, both your feet. I'm trying to make it sound sexy so he doesn't feel cheated. And they're looking at each other like I'm crazy. Like, just feet? I'm like, just feet. Yeah, feet are awesome. And they look at each other and go, okay. And so I just start running the show. And I'm like, yeah, like that. Oh, and I'm just rubbing his feet. And I'm just like, yeah, oh, arch your foot. Oh, the ball of your foot is so sexy right now. God, oh. And I'm doing that Jane Fonda and Clute thing where you're looking at your watch the whole time, like, don't let them see that I'm just like, how long is it going to take for this not to be awkward? And the answer is 2 hours. And after 2 hours of them having sex with me cheering them on and rubbing their feet the entire time, I'm just like, I don't know how we got here. We came in a car that you called. I don't know what can you call me a cab so I can get home? Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah. And he calls me a cab and he puts his smoking jacket back on and he walks me down the flight of stairs out to the street. And he's like, I'm just waiting for that awkward, girl, you don't fool nobody. We knew what the hell was going on, that you were not just in defeat. And I'm just like, kind of like, and we walk out and the cab's pulling up and he goes, I just want to tell you, I have done everything in my life. And I have, I've had courtesans, I've had orgies, here's my litany of all the things, but I have never had anybody rub my feet while I have sex with my bride. And it is awesome! The part you're not supposed to tell in a story. Sorry, I get wrapped up by story.
Yeah.
On Monday, I go to work. And I tell my boss, Sister Maple Syrup, I'm like, you want to hear how smart I am? Here's how smart I am. Tell her the whole story and like, I don't want to be awkward if I'm on a list. He's got my email. It's going to be really weird. So I got out of that one perfectly. And she's like, yeah, that was great for them. They're going to be expecting you to come over their house and rub their fucking feet all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sitting down on my computer. No, they're, oh, fuck, there's an email. Come over and do it again.
I mean, I would. If I had a hot woman who just wanted to offer to give me a foot rub during threesomes, I would definitely have her on speed dial. Are you kidding?
So the next party, a month later, you know the person in this story, Tatiana.
Oh, sure.
Is in this story. So there's like a bunch of people standing around at a kinky salon. And they're just talking, and somebody's like, oh, you're telling a story at the next Bawdy, aren't you? And they're like having this conversation. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get together with Dixie. We're going to start coaching and stuff like that. And like 4 people standing there talking, and John pops up over their head. He goes, are you talking about Dixie De La Tour? And Tanya's like, yes. And he goes, did you know she's just into feet?
Which is, by the way, a violation of a lot of different rules, but sure, go ahead. Out somebody.
And Tanya, knowing me, knows that is some little fucked up game I play. Goes, I've heard that. So she doesn't out me as lying.
Bless
because,
her heart. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so...
Can I stop you for a minute and say something?
Yes.
She's like, why are you laughing at me?
Go ahead, say whatever you say.
I'm forming the beginnings of a story hangover.
You've told too many stories.
Yeah. I've taken up too much airtime. I've revealed too much about myself. I've revealed I'm an evil person who may make you wait for 4 years to have sex with me on drugs. And I've had sex on drugs. Or maybe I trick you and tell you I'm in defeat. I'm starting to have that vulnerability hangover that you get where you're just like, oh, I am too much. A lot. Yeah, I'm a lot.
That's interesting. How do you deal with that? I mean, that's got to happen often.
Every fucking day.
Yeah.
After a show, I'm awake till 3, usually, going, oh, that was a lot of people who know a lot of stuff about me now. Shouldn't I have a filter? By now I should have a filter.
Yeah.
Still don't have a filter.
I don't know. I mean, I think everybody's got filters, and everybody filters so much about their lives. I think that's what makes Bawdy special, and that's what makes you special as the host of Bawdy, is that you give people permission to turn off those filters a little bit and just tell the real shit. Like, I've been shamed for sex stories in the past by my friends, Like, I think I'm telling something saucy at, like, a Sex in the City kind of, like, gab fest at brunch, and because somebody left bruises and I think that's sexy, people go, ew, you know? And so it's like, I think that's what's really been beautiful about Bawdy specifically, and also just about getting into the sex industry a little bit more, is that for the most part, the people that I hang out with aren't people who go ew. They're people who might say, oh, it's not my thing, but cool. And I've definitely encountered a lot of people who I'm not into their thing, but cool. You know, I'm happy that they're self-expressed. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I really want people to filter less. I think the filters are a problem.
Yeah. It doesn't, you know, I totally believe that. And I can't. There's something about story that makes me just go, okay, it's no fun if you tell it without the good parts. Those are the good parts.
Right. And that's the thing, like, even when, like, I hear the more vanilla storytelling events, right? And they'll be like, and then he took me home. And then the next day, and it's like, whoa, back up. And I think a lot of that is because, not because just the purient interest, not because I just want to hear the naughty bits, but because, like, I think a lot of people assume sex looks one way. Because when you fade to black, and then you pick it up the scene next time, you don't know what happened in that 2 hours that people were getting naked with each other.
And they're like, that's the important part. The reason I'm telling you this story was about that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you about that. But it was amazing.
Right.
Tell me more than this. It's amazing.
What was amazing about it? Why was it amazing? Why did it serve your needs? Like, that's what, like, and that's where it's like, sex is not just one thing. Sex does not just look one way. And when we actually learn the details about what excites somebody, we learn the nuance of different people's lives, and we learn about how one thing can be super exciting for one person can be a super turnoff for the next. And that's important information.
Yeah, and it's not just the experience. I mean, it's on so many different levels. I mean, you have a podcast, I have a podcast. There's live storytelling, there's all this. There's things, but like, you are not only learning about this, let's say it's a lesbian sex party and you're a straight man. You're never going to get in that room.
Right.
You get to hear what happened in that room.
Right.
If I were to send somebody as a spy to go find something out and like, so what's a lesbian sex party like? And they came back and they went, it was great. I'm like, you're the worst spy ever. I want detail. I want to know what I couldn't. It's gone.
Yeah.
That opportunity may never present itself. Yeah. I want to know what you saw and what you felt and what it, you know, like at the comfort for the stage, at the comfort level that the storyteller is willing to divulge.
Right. Right. Yeah. Totally. And the thing, like, I think that there have been times at Bawdy where I've seen people kind of not necessarily tell all the gory details, you know, about body parts moving in and on other body parts. Like, you can skip over that stuff, but you can talk about maybe a power dynamic, or you can talk about the energy of it, the emotion attached to it. Like, that's still relevant stuff.
Well, one of the things that I teach people, I was actually talking about this morning, is ideally there's a spectrum of stories. There's that person who can't say the word pussy without falling down in shock. I can't believe I said that word out loud, you know? And then there's the guy who walks in and goes, I'm a big kinkster. I'm the king of the kinksters. I got a sound in the head of my penis right now. I'm so kinky. I just want to shock you, you know? I'm trying to take both of those people in the same show and get her to say, you know, like, okay, you're a 1. He's an 11 on a scale that goes to 10. How do we get you to 5? How do we get you to talk about the things that you're uncomfortable with, but I want you to be comfortable? How do we get him to dial it down so the audience isn't going, I think I need a shower?
Right.
So you head everybody toward 5. For her, it's like, okay, you get to choose the details that you talk about. I need to feel like I got a peek in that room. When the lights went out and we woke up the next morning in the movie and you're smoking a cigarette, you need to tell me something about those hours that passed that I feel like I had access to that story.
Right.
Maybe they left their purple socks with the little bats on through the whole fucking thing. If that's as much detail as you want to tell, I'll take that.
Yeah. But details are so fucking important.
Yeah, they're crucial. Yeah.
And I think that, and again, people sometimes will, like, as a writer, it's like you learn, like, what details matter and what details you can let go, right? And in sex stories, like, in the story you just told, like, the details of those damn gold shoes, like, that's so great because it comes back later, right?
Yeah.
The foot rub wouldn't have happened if we didn't know that she was wearing these, like, fuck me gold heels on that beautiful chaise lounge. Like, and it helps paint the picture in our heads in a way that, you know, makes me feel like I'm watching as opposed to just listening.
It makes the audience feel like they've got access to something and they're being included. And I like to tell people, like, okay, here's the thing. People want to feel smart. Give them everything they need, front load your story so they can hear it coming. They think they're smarter than you. One of my favorite moments I've ever had was I went to see Legally Blonde in a movie theater. And, you know, it's just a comedy. It's just what it is. But there's a moment when they're in a courthouse. And, you know, the daughter is just like, I saw the murder. I walked in on the murder, had the gun in his hand. I saw the whole thing. Well, let's break down what happened, you know. So you said, what did you do earlier that day? Well, I went and got a perm. Yeah. So did you hear the gunshot? Well, I was in the shower washing my hair. You heard everybody in the theater go,
right?
Because everybody knows you can't wash perm for 48 hours after you get a perm. And everybody in that room felt smart at the same time.
Right.
I just looked around and went, oh my God. Like, they loved the story because they felt smarter than the storyteller.
Right.
They felt like they were ahead of the script. They felt powerful.
I'm going to law school now. Yeah, totally. yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That moment of surprise. And it's really, I think it's hard to construct those moments of surprise, but at the same time, they make for such a gratifying story experience.
Yeah. Yeah. You just get to savor it. You're like, oh, I figured it out. Here it comes. I'm right. Here it comes. There it is. You guys are idiots. I figured that out before everybody else in this audience. They're looking around giving this like, God, I knew it before you were even born. Jesus Christ. You just put it together. They love that moment. Nice. They walk out just going, this is the best show because you felt smart. We all want a moment where we feel smart.
Yeah, and especially if people are feeling uncomfortable because sex stuff is happening. Yeah. To feel like you can actually still access the story in the same way you would if it were a PG-rated movie. Kind of great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And that's it for this episode of Artgasm. Again, stay tuned next week when we will have the thrilling conclusion of my interview with Dixie De La Tour, more about storytelling and how she coaches people to tell stories no matter where their experience is when it comes to performance. It's really great, so tune in next week. Again, subscribe to Artgasm at all the places. Artgasm on Spotify, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, on Apple Podcasts, all the places. Become a subscriber, get these episodes automatically delivered into your inbox. It's wonderful. Then also become a patron if you're interested in hearing more. If you just can't get enough, go to patreon.com/artgasm. Again, I hope to see you at the Close In Munch on Monday in Portland or in New York City when I'm there. And oh my God, for the love of all monkeys, Americans, please go vote. This is too important to sit this out. I know you're probably tired of hearing it. I'm tired of thinking about it. I'm tired of being afraid for the lives of my friends and people I've never met, but I still believe in their natural humanity. So go vote. Drop off your mail-in ballot. Go get that sticker, whatever it takes. Please go vote. Please go help save American democracy. All right. Until next week. Bye.